Hey, this is Brian Mounts. We're on turfmechanic.com. Today I'm going to show you how to fix and repair a bare spot in the lawn. This is going to apply for whether you're doing this in the spring or in the fall, or probably even in the summer as well. Let me show you my spot. This bare spot in my lawn is the result of a pile of leaves that was left here over the course of an entire winter season. I raked everything up, I put it all here, intended on bagging it, and I never did. It sat here and killed everything underneath, and it hasn't recovered on its own ever since. This is a perfect example of something that needs to be fixed, and it's very easily done. Now, the important thing to keep in mind when you're repairing a bare spot in the lawn with grass seed is that we need the seed to be going down on moist soil. I have already pre-moistened this soil ahead of a morning drizzle. So yesterday I watered this down really good, and we got a little bit of rain in the middle of the night. So everything here is fully moist, pretty deep into the ground. When we put grass seed down, we want the seed to be moist. And of course, we don't want to overwater the seed. So it helps to have the ground moist before the seed goes down in the first place. For one, it softens the soil up, so it allows the seed taproot to penetrate deeper into the ground a little bit easier. That's going to help the grass establish itself a lot faster and become a lot more drought tolerant, especially as we go into the winter or the summer, depending on the season that you're doing this. Now, if this surface that we need to seed had dead grass or debris on it, we would have to scrape it away with a rake or a garden trowel. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a garden trowel. Not only does the seed need to be going down on a surface that is moist and softened and clear of debris, but it needs to go down on soil that is not hard. It needs to be able to penetrate the soil very easily. And that's why we scrape it up, even if we don't have dead grass debris on the soil surface. Now you notice that I also have tree roots here. You may not have tree roots. Because I have tree roots, I actually want to raise the soil level up ever so slightly. So I'm going to be applying a little bit of topsoil on top of all of this, which is going to give me a nice thick layer of loose soil to put seed into. I should say that the topsoil is not going down because I have tree roots, but for me, I don't want to hit these tree roots with my lawnmower. So I want to bring the soil level up a little bit. This is what I'm using. This is the G&B Organics Premium Topsoil. This is just what they sell at my local store. So you don't really need to get anything crazy fancy here. I'm just putting a top dressing over the bare spot so that the soil level comes up a little bit. Now I'm just going to go ahead and rake that in so that it becomes generally flat. Now at this point we probably have a solid ½ inch, if not more, of pretty loose soil in the bare spot. That's a perfect spot for a seed to germinate and put a taproot down pretty easily. When a seed germinates, the taproot goes down before you ever see the germinated sprout pop up. So the soil that the seed is sitting on really does need to be loose, more than you realize. Now with the soil loosened and top dressed with topsoil, you have to actually take a minute to take a look at your surroundings. Right here, we are covered by trees. This area is going to be shady almost all the time, all year round. That's really important because not just any grass type can go here. I could grab any sun and shade mix and put it here, but for my purposes, I'm going to be putting down a fine fescue. I live in a cool season grass climate, so a fine fescue is the perfect grass type for a full shade environment in a cool climate. If this was a sunny spot, then I might go for something like a Kentucky bluegrass, a perennial rye, or a turf type fescue. Now there are 4 primary kinds of fine fescue. I'm going to be putting down hard fescue here. And most likely next year I'm going to overseed with creeping red fescue so that I have a variety of fine fescues mixed into the existing grass that is already here. This is not a guide on which grass type you're supposed to choose. That's just what I'm using for my location. Now for this particular grass type, 4 to 5 pounds are going to cover a full 1,000 square feet. This bag right here is 5 pounds. My spot is probably only 4 square feet. It's not very big. I am going to overseed around the entire area to blend it in, and that's what I would recommend that you do as well. So you're not going to need that much grass seed. Now if your spot was particularly big, you could get a drop spreader or a hand spreader that you walk across the yard. For spots this size, spreading seed by hand is perfectly acceptable, and it's probably the easiest thing to do. Literally just grab it and spread it around evenly as best as you can. You're going to want to go more dense in the middle of the spot, but you're not going to want to stop there. You're going to want to bring it out to the outer edges into your existing grass so that it blends out a little bit better. If you don't blend it into the existing grass, then you're always going to see where the dead spot in your lawn used to be. Now at this point, you're going to have nice coverage over your dead spot in your lawn with a thick layer of grass seed. Now if you're doing a full lawn setting, you probably won't put grass seed down so densely, but for a spot repair, this is perfectly acceptable because we're not going through bags and bags and bags of seed. And we want to ensure the best germination possible. To get grass seed to germinate, not only does the seed need to be touching soil and need to be touching loosened soil, but it needs to stay adequately moist. So what we're going to do is we're going to tamp the grass seed down into the soil that we just loosened up. We're not going to go crazy with it. Just a light tamping is all we need. Just a light press of the foot. The bigger the spot is, you might use a lawn roller or some other tool. For me, in a spot this size, I'm just going to tamp it down with my foot. Now with that out of the way, we have to put down a little bit of peat moss right on top of it. The peat moss is going to retain moisture in the grass seed so that the grass seed never actually dries out. Peat moss is pretty inexpensive. There are alternatives. You could use coconut coir, or you could simply cover the whole thing up with garden crop cover. Now, peat moss is something that you can pick up at most big box stores throughout the year. I buy mine at a local garden supply store. It really doesn't matter where you go to, and there are some fancier versions of peat moss that have extra additives into it. This is just regular stuff. The cheapest peat moss that I could find. When dealing with peat moss, sometimes you're going to find big chunks. When you find these big chunks, you really have to take your time to make the chunks into fine particles, a dust, so to speak. I like to put it in a bucket and then take all of the chunks and make them as small and fine and fluffy as possible. After you work it with your fingers for a while, it becomes very easy to manage. Now for larger areas that I've seeded, I've gone ahead and taken the extra step to pre-moisten the peat moss because it makes it easier for the peat moss to stay moist so I don't have to water the area quite as often. However, in the middle of the fall or the early spring, peat moss, once it becomes moist on the ground, it's going to stay moist for a long time because daytime temperatures aren't that high. You also don't need very much peat moss for a small dead spot like this. Make sure to spread your peat moss very thin. All we need is just enough to cover the seed to keep it moist. With the peat moss covering the grass seed, you can tell that the grass seed is still there, but most of it is under a very fine layer of fluffy peat. Now we're just going to have to moisturize this with the finest setting that our sprinkler allows. And then if you really want to be successful with it, you're going to cover it with crop cover, which is what I do every single time I possibly can. All right, having fully saturated the whole area, this is when we get into the covering process. This is the optional step that I like to take. Certainly this is important if you're seeding late in the fall or early in the spring. Crop cover is also frequently called a frost blanket. It protects garden crops from frosts. Although grass is not a garden crop, it will still protect it from frost as well. Because I'm personally seeding right now in the late fall in cold temperatures, it takes a long time for this seed to germinate. In this particular seeding project, it took a solid 19 days for hard fescue to germinate. If you're following these instructions when weather is warmer, let's say late spring, maybe late summer or early fall, then your germination time is going to be significantly faster. Not only does the crop cover protect the seed and the baby grass from the weather, from cold weather, but it also protects it from birds and animals that would disturb it otherwise. Again, this is especially important in cold weather when the grass seed should be expected to be on the ground for a lot longer before germination time. The longer the seed is on the ground, the more likely something will disturb it and give you spotty results. Now, before we continue on with the video, it's important to note that you have to keep your seed moist. Peat moss helps, the crop cover helps, but no matter what, you have to have a sprinkler set up to go off regularly to keep it moist, or you got to go out and hand water it yourself. Since the topic of this video is spot repair, you're probably going to be going out there by hand with a hose and just spritzing it down. You got to do it regularly. And if you're doing one of the slow germination grass types or seeding in cold weather, it's going to take a long time and you can't miss a day.
It's been 6 days, 7 days, I don't know, something like that. Today's October 12th, and we've had a lot of cold weather. I'm gonna go check the grass seed under there. Curious. Nothing really is up yet, but I see some of the seeds have moved around a little bit. Sometimes that means that the taproot is starting to germinate and go down. Hopefully we'll see sprouts in the next few days to a week. All right, I've been doing this seeding project in cold weather. I never really led on to that in the beginning of this video. But 19 days have passed. I've kept that thing covered and damp, moist, protected from the birds and the elements. And despite the fact that we've got very low temperatures, the grass there is now growing. That spot is repaired. Let's take a look at it. All right, here we are. Just remove the crop cover. Remember, day 19. This is hard fescue. And we've got really good germination and lots of spots. It's a little bit thinner there in the middle, but there's still a lot of sprouts coming up there. So I don't think that this is going to have any trouble at all blending in. Now, blending in. It's not going to blend in perfectly. And the reason for that is because I just overseeded hard fescue over an existing turf area, and almost nothing in here is probably hard fescue. So it's not going to blend in perfectly, but I'm not going to have a big muddy dirt spot. And that's the goal, fix the spot. Overseeding the entire area and possibly doing a further renovation and bringing the grass over there, that's another project. If I end up taking that on, I'll be putting more hard fescue down and taking the fescue over towards the front of the house. Fixing the spot, though, is the point of this video, and it's not that hard. I hope this was helpful. If you're going to be overseeding, I have a video up here about overseeding. Don't mess up the project. It's not that hard if you follow the steps to get it done right the first time.